when you have a mind for magic anyway, that you've got a mind that likes to seek patterns. And Enochian magic is all about these patterns through the tables and through the names, and it grabs you. It's a puzzle, and it grabs you, and it won't let you go. It hasn't let me go now for what's it been since 1993? What's it been? 40
Yeah.
years? I don't
Yeah.
know. I don't know. I guess 30 years, but yeah.
Yeah. That's yeah, you got into Enochian magic when I was you know, doing my babysitter certification course at age 12.
Oh wow. Well,
Uh,
I wasn't that much older. I would have been about what, 18, 19 or so, I guess.
yeah, 2 years later, of course, I was chanting aethers from Enochian physics or whatever by the Schulers,
Wow.
at
I'm
our Wiccan
sorry.
Sabbats. Well, it was what it was. The Enochian
It was
physics
my
came out, and we were like showing our science teachers, "Did you know about this?"
Did you know about this? I had that book too. Actually, someone got it for me as a gift. That was the second Schuler book I ever owned. The first one was the Enochian workbook, the really big one.
Oh God,
Yeah.
we were so
And it,
disappointed with that. We
and
tried.
and the thing
We
is,
tried.
I make fun of the books, but the big sin in the books was that they didn't actually say anything. Like, if you picked it up in the store and you looked at the table of contents, it was like, oh, here's a chapter on how to scry in the spirit vision, and here's a chapter on the ethers, and here's a chapter on, this is great. And then you get it home, and the chapter on each chapter is like less than a page long, and it just kind of says that yes, this thing exists, and then they go into the next chapter. So I always felt like I just wasn't getting anything out of those books, you know but they were still the starting point. They were still what introduced me to it all. And I might
Yeah.
have moved on to better sources afterward, but like you said, it is what it is, and it's what got me started. It was the first book I looked into and said, "Yeah, I have to know what this is."
How important do you think the role of Enochian magic and the spirits conjured through the tablets, ye mighty archangels, angels, rulers, kings, and elementals, are to the elemental initiations in the Golden Dawn?
Well, I mean,
This is very much a Hierophant to Hierophant kind of question, eh?
yeah, it's
Like,
it's it's
in
it's
your
not an
experience
easy
as a
question to
Hierophant.
answer, yeah, because it really depends on the how you're looking at it. Like, for example, I could say they're not that important in the sense that there's nothing in the ritual. Like, there's no point in the ritual where you invoke specific angels out of the tablet to do specific things. You could put a lot more focus on the god forms. Of course, that's we're getting into neophyte versus the elemental rituals, but you could put a lot of focus more on the officers and what they're doing and their forms, and the different deities that are involved, like I mentioned in Philosophus and Practicus. You're taken around and you meet the different Kabiri in one, and you meet the different Egyptian deities in another. So you could say, well, the Enochian entities aren't even there, so you could say they're not important. But for each elemental initiation, you begin by opening up the tablet of that grade. Now, I can quibble over whether or not it's the right tablet, versus, deep purist material, but that's not here nor there. In the tradition of the Golden Dawn, you start the grade, you call in the elemental force literally through that tablet by invoking its names. So in that sense, it's absolutely of primary importance. You literally couldn't do anything else without it. It is the source of the energy that you're calling in, and everything else flows out from it. So it's interwoven into the tradition in a very subtle way. Like, the officers will see the Hierophant. The officers will participate in the Hierophant going over to the tablet and opening it at the beginning of the ceremony, and then closing it at the end. In fact, the new initiate is actually involved, actually stands there with the Hierophant when the tablet is closed at the end. So yeah, supremely important. But you're not going to find active, what you would call Enochian magic in the outer order. That was all
Yeah.
reserved for the inner order only. And of course, they have their own, I say it's the Golden Dawn. I should be saying we, but I'm more interested in the deep purist stuff. But when you're doing Golden Dawn Enochian magic, they have their own way of doing it and their own very, very elaborate tradition, which is also, again, very interwoven into the greater Golden Dawn current and their tradition specifically. So yeah, it is very important. It is absolutely important. I don't, I'm like, if you were to take that out, you could legitimately say it's not a legitimate, you know, like let's say you took the earth tablet out of the Zealotr ritual. You don't open it during the opening. You don't have the new Zealotr throw the salt toward the tablet. I'm not saying anything here that's not published. Um, you could make the case that that's not a legitimate Zealotr ceremony, but yeah, there would be nothing in, like, we're not going to reveal any Enochian mysteries to an outer order initiate. We're not going to be given any Enochian rituals to do. You're not going to have to evoke any of those particular angels, or you know what I'm saying. So
Yeah.
none of that is of concern to the initiate, the candidate, as they're going up through these grades. It only becomes more of a concern once you're in the inner order. And like I said, you get that inner order version of the script and you get to see what's going on the astral. And there, the energies coming in through the tablet and stuff become a lot more apparent and more important to what you're doing in the ritual. So
Yeah,
it's
no,
not a yes or yeah, it's not a yes or no answer really. It's a subtle and nuanced kind of answer.
that's why I asked. Uh,
Yeah.
that's one of those $5 questions.
Yeah,
And
yeah, a
I'm
lot of questions are like that. There's never a black or white yes or no easy answer.
well, yeah, and what's interesting for me as someone who got to do several terms as Hierophant, blessed be he, like privilege of the lifetime. Um, the question sitting on that throne, and I don't know if you know what I mean, when your sort of head opens up and then everything streams into the back of it, and you're like, oh, I'm part of everything, and you're like, oh shit. It's like the only way you can express the profundity of that is with silence, honestly, as you know. And but the more you do it, this you start to wonder, where are the influence? You start to feel the different influence in the temple. And there's so much going on with the God forms. There's so much going on with all of the stations and all that stuff. But in recent years, I started to ask myself the question: how significant is the Enochian in this? Because it was something I always took for granted. And I was wondering, like, you can answer however you wish on that, but I'm also curious, do you think Westcott added the Enochian to the manuscripts before he gave them to Mathers, or do you think the Enochian was already in the ciphers?
Well, I mean, that would all depend on whether or not I even believe Westcott wrote the cipher manuscripts.
No,
I
I'm
mean,
I'm taking for granted. We're assuming that he didn't.
I mean,
We're assuming he didn't. Do you
if
think
he
he
didn't,
added
then
them?
no. I think if he didn't, then no. I think the tablets and stuff were already mentioned in the cipher manuscripts, but um, yeah, I'm not so sure that the cipher manuscripts have much of an origin before the Golden Dawn anyway. So, and
It was probably
Westcott
written by
was the
Mackenzie or
one
Hockley,
who
right?
had the what's that?
It was probably written by Mackenzie or Hockley.
Well, that's a pervading theory, but I mean, we don't know. I
Yeah, of
mean, it
course.
could have just as easily have just been written by Westcott, and we do know that Westcott is the one that was the Enochian Stan in the original order. I mean, even today, right now, we're still getting stuff um comes into the order from other sources, other collections and private collections and stuff, but we're still finding stuff that Westcott did. Uh, uh, Tabitha God, this is years ago now,
I
but she
still haven't
published
got it.
that book called, yeah, Book of the Concourse of the Watchtowers. That apparently is, I mean, a lot, I've read the book and a lot of it is the concourse of the forces that she just kind of elaborated on, but there's a lot of stuff in there. And I think she appended it onto the end, these tablets that Westcott had created. And I mean, there's just so much Westcott stuff. So it's like whenever you think of early Golden Dawn and it wasn't Mathers. He wasn't really that into the Enochian stuff. And as far as we know, Woodman, his main thing was Kabbalah. And so, yeah, any Enochian inclusions in the Golden Dawn corpus, Westcott is, to me, is always the main suspect.
That's why I was curious if you thought he
I
might have
even
added
suspect
it.
him for I'm sorry to interrupt, but
No, it's fine.
um the what was it, Sloan? Oh no, not Sloan. No, maybe it was Sloan. I'm spacing right now, but it's the book that was published as The Practical Angel Magic of John D. and
Yeah,
Edward Kelly.
yeah.
And
It's the
it's the
expansion
source book.
of 3191.
Yeah, it's basically the source book for Golden Dawn and Enochian magic. That is where all the basic rules for what would become the order system are laid out. And I even suspect Westcott as being possibly the author of that. I mean, so
Interesting. That
yeah.
is interesting. Yeah, yeah. Like Book H, or is it Book
Book
H?
H,
Yeah,
thank
Book
you.
H.
That's what I was
Yeah,
trying to come up
yeah.
with. My brain wouldn't. I've even written about Book H and I couldn't. Thank you. Okay, so yes,
Teamwork,
Book H.
Frater.
I even suspect Westcott as being the author of Book H. So it's yeah, he's
Interesting.
kind of the Enochian guy from the original order. I could be wrong, but I'm saying that's my
Yeah.
suspicion.
Well,
He's always my first suspect.
that's why I think if we assume that the ciphers weren't written by Westcott, and I don't think the ciphers were written by Westcott, I think he did find them or get them given to him, because Hockley and Mackenzie, and there's all these, because it's so easy to think that the guys that Westcott was like one of the first major occults. Like, no, there's always been major occults. Like Franz Hartmann, hello, there's like lots of major players you just never hear about. Like today,
Oh
like
yeah.
people know who
Oh
you
yeah.
are. A few
Oh,
people know who I am.
they didn't come out of a vacuum by a long
Exactly,
shot.
right? Like for every person like you or me who is semi-public, there's 50 people that aren't.
Yeah.
And many of those people might know just as much as us, if not more, and be just good. We don't know. They're not public. Who knows? A lot of the greatest magicians you've probably worked with, no one knows their names, I'm guessing.
No one knows them. Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah. They don't know. That's what I said earlier. It's like where it comes to the Golden Dawn, you don't see me, talk about it much in the public sphere. I'm not in Golden Dawn groups. I used to be in a couple, but I got out because I just couldn't stand them. I don't even publish Golden Dawn books, at least not yet. I think I offered something to like one Golden Dawn book was the Flying Rules book.
I love that book.
What was that, a decade ago or longer now? But yeah, that's been the most prominent Golden Dawn work I've actually published. So yeah, it's because it's about your personal work, and it
Yeah.
really shouldn't be aired out in public because all it does is result in, like we were talking about with the ordination thing, with people picking it apart and wanting to question each other and who's got the bigger balls and who's got it's just better. And yeah, so I happen to be a big mouth. Chick and Tabitha happen to be occult big mouths. We're the ones who go out and publish or make videos or classes or whatever, it is we're doing. And how both of us are running stores. They've got the Golden Dawn shop. I've got Doc Saul's. But there are hundreds of adepts out there, that you just never hear about.
Yeah. Well, when people
they're not publishing, they're not running their mouths online or doing podcasts or all that stuff like we do.
Yeah. Well, when I started doing the podcast and people started noticing me, of course, they're like, yeah, but who the fuck are you? And like, one of the many that just did my training, I did my thing, and then went and lived his life, from after I shut down the temple and gave up being Imperator of Canada for our order. I was like, well, let's go live my life and see what all of this stuff I've learned can do in the world. Let's go test it. Let's go see what I can make of my life. And most adepts, that's all they ever do, right? Like it's easy. So many people have talked shit or do talk shit about, the order I was in and zinc and all that. But it's like, most of the people who I met and trained with and trained by and trained, like most of them are wonderful, absolutely wonderful. And you'll never know their names. Some of them are even dead now. One just passed away, actually, rest her soul. Like a major teacher of mine from 96 onward, just passed away of, I believe, Parkinson's. It's not good, but, and these are, you'll never know their names or their accomplishments. And these are often they're amazing magicians and amazing human beings. Right. And it's like, that's what I love about the magical traditions is generally outside of the group that you work with or the people who you learn from and the people you teach, no one knows what you're really into because it's not important. It's not important what
we're the exception. We're not the rule.
Yeah. Right. And I went public. I don't even know why I went public and started doing everything I do. I'm like, I'm pretty transparent with my life these days. And I don't know what triggered that. Honestly, what I think it was my higher genius, like, is like, you got to do this now, or you can do this now. And I know for a fact it's for a limited time. I feel that, which is why I'm burning so brightly with it and like so on fire with it. Like, I wake up and I start, and I don't stop till I go to bed. I'm doing everything I can to serve people. And then at some point, I won't feel bad about vanishing to a cottage in some Celtic country one day with my lute and uilleann pipes and just singing hymns to the fairies till the cows come home and I die. Like, I won't feel bad about that. But I'm definitely going to enjoy this phase of my life as much as I can and connect with people like you and anyone else who wants to really dig their teeth into this material, because it's so juicy and life affirming in my experience. I mean,
very life changing in my experience. That's
yeah,
for sure.
life changing. I mean, damn.
If you're
like,
called to it, but it definitely is a calling. I do believe, as a Gnostic, obviously, I believe it's something that you're born to. You're either a Gnostic or you're not.
oh yeah,
And even in the Golden Dawn, it's often missed, but it's said in the Neophyte, the very first initiation is that God can awaken into momentary life the magical passions in any heart, even the heart of a child, but they cannot reign unless you have the natural virtues, unless you're literally born
to be
be their throne. And that's it. So, I mean, that's why you have people that'll come through and then just vanish. But if the work is being done right, especially once you get into the inner order, if you take your 5-6, it should slingshot you off in whatever your true will is. And for some people, they're going to be like Chicken Tabby. Their true will is to be Golden Dawners, to run the order, and there are others of us who we become adepts, and that is our calling, to teach in that order, to help run that order. And then others are called to publish, and they'll write books, and they may give classes and lectures, and it may be on magic, but it can also be on something else. This adept goes and becomes an accomplished astrologer. This adept goes off and becomes an expert in linguistics. This adept goes off and actually gets into politics and becomes a political leader. This adept, so it's not always going to be magic. It's not always going to be occultism. But if the work is done right, it should take you to where you are supposed to go. And it's been fascinating over the past couple of decades watching that happen to people, watching them work their way up to that order and then get into the inner order. And then you got to, some of them stay and work in the order, or some of them have other things to do, but they also stay. And then some of them just kind of fly away. And you never even see them again. But whatever they needed to get from the experience, they got that they can apply to their life. And then they go on to achieve what their true will was for them to achieve, which is a stark difference from what you hear people say online. The Golden Dawn system is flawed. All it ever does is produce broken people. And that's because those are the ones you hear it from. Those are the ones who get online and make a bunch of noise and, complain about everything and start fights with people and break into people's homes and do all sorts of other ridiculous, crazy things because they didn't follow the system. They didn't follow it all the way through. They thought they knew better. They thought they didn't need to follow the system, that they were ascended beyond the system. And those are the broken ones. Those are the ones who go out and unfortunately give the rest of us a bad name, but that's unfortunately the nature of that beast.